Hi guys and welcome back. In this video we're going to be testing our printer class. Let's go over to the test printer and add our import and then create our test printer case. Now let's write our first test. So we'll say test print within capacity and we'll say that the printer is a new printer that has a certain number of pages per second, let's say 2 pages per second, and a capacity of 300. Okay. And I believe that this should be a float. Apologies for that. You do want a float there, just in case you can print like 2.5 pages per second. Now, we've got our printer object here, and we can say print 25 pages. Now, there are two things that you could do here. You could say that the test passes if the correct message is returned. Alternatively, you could say the test fails if an error is raised. So if you think the test should pass if there is no error, then this is a sufficient test, because if you run it, you'll see that no error is raised and therefore the test passes. All tests pass by default unless there is an error in them. Alternatively, you could say that the message is that, and then you could say self.assert equal message, or rather printed 25 pages in 12.5 seconds is equal to the message. Oh, that should be 12.50 seconds because we formatted it to 2 decimal places. And I have an error here. So you can see how writing this message out is actually potentially a helpful thing. There you have your test passing. Either of these is correct. I personally would not check for the message. I would have a separate test for that. I would just check that the printer prints. Now, for all our tests that we'll be writing, we will be using a printer object. So in order to reduce duplication, we can extract this and put it into a separate method that we'll call the setup method. And you don't need this return none, that is implied. So we'll say self.printer is a printer where the pages per second is 2.0 and the capacity is 300. And now what that means is you no longer need that, but you do need to use self.printer. Now this setup method here runs before each test. So if you have multiple test methods, this one will run before each one. So you always get a new printer every test. If you want to run this method only once for the entire test, then you will do setup class and you will get rid of this self here, and you could do cls.printer is this printer. And of course, you do need to make this a class method. And here you can still access self.printer, and it will know that you refer to cls.printer just because of how Python's inheritance works. You would choose one or the other, purely depending on whether you want a new printer every test, or you want to reuse the same printer for the tests. Because the printer has a state that varies over time, and that is this capacity here, I strongly recommend that you do not share the printer across tests. So I would make this into a normal setup method like that. The reason for that is because if you write a test that uses up all of the capacity, say, then you have another test that tries to print some more, but you've run out of capacity, so the test would fail. If you have one printer for all tests, by having a printer for each test, you don't have that problem because you always get a new one for each test. So whenever you have state that changes in the object, create a new object for each test. Do not share objects across tests. All right, I just wanted to show you about the setup and setup class. And also, I wanted to tell you that there is a tear down and tear down class. So that you've got tear down and tear down class, these two methods here, in case you want to run something after each test, that you can do, of course. That's everything for this video. Thanks for joining me in this one. I'll see you in the next one, where we're going to continue with some of this. I'll see you there.